Hi, welcome everyone. Thank you for coming to Developing Young Leaders of Color with Mind Spark Learning. I'm Sammy Anzer. I'm joined here by Kiki Huckabee, and this is one of my absolute favorite topics that I get to talk with you all and work with you all today. If you can, we ask that you can put your cameras on when you have the chance, because normally this would be done in person, but we don't always have that opportunity, and this is one way that we could really connect with you all and what we're doing. I'm going to give you guys about 30 seconds to kind of get situated before we start. Kiki is going to drop in the chat a link for the toolkit, the graphic organizer that we're going to be using while we're following along, and it's where you can capture your notes and keep up with all the links that we have. It's nice to meet you. Is it Alsuna? Am I saying that right?
Yes, you are.
Thank you for joining us. And is it Sari also?
Yes, it's Sari.
Thank you. Thank you guys for coming. We really appreciate it. Um, let's get started. So that's me. That's my very new headshot. Very excited about it. I'm Sammy Anzer. I'm the director of professional learning here at Mind Spark. And I recently got the opportunity to develop my own series about something that I care about. And before we get into the content, I want to tell you all about it really quickly. I went to New York City public schools, and when I was there, I kind of never really cared about school. And it wasn't until probably about 11th grade when I had a teacher named Mr. Guerrero, who looked like me, who talked like me, and who turned back my best essay 3 times and like told me that I could do better, that I could begin to like imagine myself as something more than what I was doing or what my neighborhood showed me that I could do. And it was empowering. And I realized the power of it because I became a teacher. And then after I became a teacher, I often thought about Mr. Guerrero, how he made me feel powerful and hopeful and made me realize I could do things that I couldn't do. And that's what I wanted to give to my students. And that's a nice story. But I want to challenge you and ask you something. Why should you care? Why should you care about that one story? Well, I'm going to try to make a case for it. One thing that you'll see in your graphic organizer that Kiki put into the chat is that I put a few links in there. And some of those links are, depending on what you're into, you'll have the option of watching a YouTube video. You can watch a YouTube video about a Black scientist who sees herself and her students in that option, a research article if you like that more dense stuff, and a couple little articles that kind of like give these ideas about why it's important for students to see themselves reflected in their teachers or to see themselves in powerful positions. So Kiki dropped that in the chat, and I want to say about 4 minutes, not a huge amount of time, right? Just 4 minutes, look through these articles, see what you can get, find a piece of evidence and drop it in the chat for why should we care about this issue. Thank you guys for putting some things in the Padlet, maybe put some stuff in the chat. Definitely, I see having women in STEM and seeing people of color in STEM in these powerful positions, it makes a huge difference. And it's nice to have the research to kind of back this up, but I feel like it's also something that we've all experienced and know in our lives, that when you have someone that you can see yourself in, it's motivating. It's the power of a role model. The first idea that I want to share with you about my time in the classroom, which is then going to extend to one of your activities really quick, is this idea of how can we add more representation into our curriculum. I was teaching at a school where I had to teach The Things They Carried by Tim O'Brien, which is a story about the Vietnam War. And one of the big problems with that was that it was kind of like abstract. It's written by a white guy, and most of my students were not white. And the differences in language were kind of a hurdle. But one of the things that I was able to do was, I know this really cool song where this guy is rapping about the Vietnam War from his dad's perspective. And I started the unit off by putting that song in. And you might think, okay, a song, that's cool, but what does that do for my students academically or education-wise? Well, it does a few things. First, it gives them an easy access point to the material. Instead of reading a whole book, they get the whole idea of the Vietnam War in 3 minutes. And it's really accessible, right? So it's like a song, it has a beat, there's lyrics to it. Um, on top of that, it gave them a leverage point for the text. So when they're thinking about Tim O'Brien, it's like, oh, he's saying this, but this rapper said this, and now I have to compare and contrast and see how these things are similar or different. And what that does is that gives them a more comprehensive and rigorous understanding of the material. So adding more representation into your material, things that your students care about, or adding their voices in there isn't just like a nice thing to do to make your students feel good. It actually is more difficult, more rigorous, and more challenging for your students. And we should always be seeking to do this. So this is my example. I'll show you a little bit of the rap song. It might not be entirely appropriate, maybe 10 seconds, just so you guys get a feel for it.
They wanna harm us, they all up on us, bang bang. Bullet hit my chest, feel no pain. To my left, the captain caught a bullet right in his brain. Body parts flying, loss of limbs, explosions, bad intentions. I see my best friends.
Okay, so you get it. But now I'm going to challenge you to do the same thing. You might have a particular unit that your school is making you teach. Maybe you have to teach Washington, maybe you have to teach this, maybe you have to teach that. I want to challenge you to add another exposure that will show your students' voices reflected in this next unit or lesson, right? Like if we think about George Washington crossing the Delaware, that's the story that we're all told, maybe here in America. But there was also, Buffalo soldiers and people in the Caribbean fighting the Revolutionary War, and their voices are not represented in there. And this is a powerful opportunity to give them a different understanding and a different voice. And you can see I put the evidence for that on that slide. So right on the Padlet that we were working on before, think about a unit, throw it in there, and think about how you can add more student voice or representation to it. And if you're having a hard time with that, just jump on someone else's and help them out. That might be a good thing too. I'm going to start the timer, and if you have any questions, hit us in the chat. Okay, I got it before the buzzer went off again. I'm so happy about that. One thing that's really important about this that you all probably know is that this is a way for students to engage with their identity as a learner. This is that idea that we hear, oh, I'm not a math person. Oh, I'm not an English person. But a lot of times our students, people of color, women, they see these fields dominated by people who don't look and sound like them. And they subconsciously think, oh, I'm not one of those people. I'm not a science person. Oh, I'm not someone who can write a speech. But showing them these ideas and giving them these options opens their mind up to say, you know what? I could be one of these types of people. And one of the biggest things that we want you to walk away with at MindSpark is that you have something that you can apply directly to your classroom today, this week, or this month. So when you think about those different voices or representations and that unit that you want to encounter something in, let's use each other. Let's use each other's ideas. Post a unit or lesson that you think might be difficult to add more student representation or voice into that Padlet, and we'll all work on it together for the next 5 minutes. And again, this takeaway will help you get more student representation, more engagement, and make your curriculum more rigorous. Any questions? Let me know in the chat, and 5 minutes. All right, thank you all for voting on the Padlet. I see that there might have been an error where you weren't able to comment on it now that I'm checking the chat, but I think that there's still a lot of good stuff here. Like I see that wanting to see your children's voices in Caribbean history is a powerful thing. And when I think about that, I wonder, what Caribbean authors do you really enjoy that can be incorporated? And I think a lot of it, when we're teaching, comes down to what things we really enjoy, which is the final point of this snippet. Yes, it's great to put rap music in there if you're into that. yes, it's great to, I don't know, incorporate Justin Bieber. Look how old I am, that I don't even know what the kids are listening to anymore. But ultimately, the best role model is you. Even if you can't bring someone from your student's background into the classroom, or you don't always have access to it, as teachers, we have a very powerful ability to become role models for students. And the way we do that, well, let me say this. Role models of color are effective for students of color because they can see themselves in it, but students can also see themselves in you. And the way that you do that is with genuine vulnerability, and that's what you have to do in order to reach them, because ultimately, yes, we are different skin colors, yes, we are different males and females, and there are all these things that separate us, but there are some experiences that are intertwined with us as human. Everyone has experienced being hungry. Everyone has maybe had a birthday that they celebrated. Everyone has been scared. And when you can find these things and connect with them, you have a very powerful ability to connect with students who are not just look like you and sound like you, but also students who don't. And when students can find that and see themselves in you, that's when you can really connect with them. So I'm going to take you along a short line of questioning really quick before we wrap this up. I want you to imagine just the first question. What student have you had trouble connecting with at first? And when you've thought of the student successfully, just send a reaction emoji. If your camera's on, you can give me a thumbs up when you've thought of this student, something to let me know that you have it. Thank you, Sam. And when you think of the student that you had trouble connecting with, how did you end up reaching them? What was it that made that connection possible? Because maybe they didn't connect with the subject you taught. Maybe they thought English wasn't for them. Maybe they thought math wasn't for them. But there was something that ended up allowing you to reach them. I want you to think about what that is. And when you have it, please do that thumbs up again, just like you did. Thank you. Thank you, Alsuna. And then I would challenge you and push you to think about the next lesson that you're teaching, this next unit. What human component about it interests you the most? What is it that excites you about it? Because if it doesn't excite you, there's no reason that you should be teaching it. What is it that you love about it? Is it that you felt powerful the first time you figured out fractions? If that's true, that's something that everyone can relate to when they learn something that they didn't know before. And then the last thing I'm going to ask you is, how can you put yourself, because you are the best role model to your students in this moment, how can you put yourself or your journey into that unit or lesson that you were talking about? How can you put some vulnerability and your authentic self in there? And if you want to process in a group, we can put you in breakout rooms, and you could do that by having your camera off. And if you would if you'd like to process individually, turn your camera off, and you can do that and write in the Padlet. And if you'd like to talk it out with some people in the group, you can leave your camera on and we'll do a breakout room and we could all discuss it. And Kiki, would you be able to help us with the breakout room?
Absolutely. I am just going to put you all in a breakout room. If you do not want to share out, do not worry. You can just mute yourself, leave your camera off. All right, here we go. Just a couple minutes.
And once you fill this out, you hit submit, and then you'll be able to take the attendance form right here. So you give us your feedback, and you give us, so that helps me improve and do this better in the future. And then you guys can get your attendance tracked on this. And the session that you attended today was Developing Leaders of Color. And you guys can fill that out. And as soon as you're, look Look at this old picture of me. Oh my God. As soon as you're done, that's it. And please, I'd really appreciate if you guys did that. And like I said, reach out to us with any ideas or questions. What do you think, Kiki? Should I leave this weird picture of me right here that's like...
Yes, so we can all stare at it.
And as soon as you're done with that, you guys are free to jump off. And I wanted to let you know that I'm also thinking about trying to turn this into a podcast where I talk to different leaders of color and use it as a classroom resource. And if it's something that you'd be interested in, it's something I'd love to develop, but we got to get, a lot of hype and groundswell. So I need people going, we need this podcast, and the feedback and eval if you are interested in it.
Sarah, I agree. Sam may think it's a weird photo. I think it's great. But I also love, thank you, Sarah, so much for typing into the chat. I think as a white woman, a simple thing I can do is look for diverse sites. People of color are everywhere in industry if you only make an effort to look. Absolutely. Thank you so much for sharing that out.